Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I got to tell you, tomorrow's show is really good. I recorded backwards for some reason, and I recorded Monday first. I just finished Monday. Monday's show is really good. Make sure you come back tomorrow. Let's see if today can live up to the hype. From Variety, dressed in a sharply creased dark gray suit, in contrast to the plaids and Pendletons he favored during the pandemic, Stephen Colbert bounds onto the stage on the evening of June 21st, minutes before the taping of his show starts, high-kicking and punching the air with abandon. Colbert says, "Thank you so much for being here. I'm not over it. I'm not over having live audiences. The energy you give lets us do a better show." Colbert spoke to Variety and said, "I had to adjust my rhythms as a performer. I didn't realize fully how much I had adjusted my rhythms until I came back here and had an audience again." Colbert's interviewing skills have been sharpened by months of longer and more intimate and less plug-the-project-focused exchanges with guests. If there was any shadow of his bombastic Bill O'Reilly-esque Colbert Report character hanging over The Late Show, it's gone now. Colbert says, "Until the moment I walked into this building 6 years ago," I can't believe it's been 6 years already that Letterman's gone. That's insane to me. "I was an actor, and I had no illusions about it. I was an actor, not a talk show host." Coming back to the live audience lets us say, "Oh, this is great, but I don't want to be just satisfied that we do the old form of The Late Show. We've got to keep evolving," and I don't know what that is, other than I know you always have to wear that idea on your nose. You put a little music stand with a little piece of sheet music that says "Evolve" on it. Ultimately, I think you should do these shows as if you're putting up a college newspaper, as if no one's watching. 49% of my joy of doing the show, the audience never sees. Working with this staff and seeing them rise to the occasion and wanting them to be as dedicated to getting the show right as a performer as they are to getting it right from a technical or production end. I'm glad to have relaxed into that vulnerable feeling because it makes you less nervous in general about being a public figure, let alone a public performer. It's like you're saying, well, this is what I'm really like. I hope that's okay with you. And to find out that was okay was another level of becoming myself, of which this entire show has been a journey to. Colbert paid out of his own pocket to cover the salaries of an undisclosed number of crew members during the many months of the pandemic after CBS said it could no longer keep idled workers on the payroll. That's pretty lame, CBS. That is like super lame. So Conan O'Brien points out, Stephen is a quality human being. You take away the suits and the noise in these shows and you're left with just the person. That's something that shows Stephen in a really good light. During the pandemic, Colbert said they had to push hard. For one thing, each episode needed about 20% more material to make up for the lack of audience laughter. Wow. You know, I can see that in one of the many hats I wear. I'm an adjunct professor. And, you know, usually when you teach a college class, you're in person with the students. Now, when I was at home, and they were on Zoom cameras with half the cameras off, I found material that in person took me 2.5 hours to do was taking me like 90 minutes. So I can totally, and the reason it only took 90 minutes is because the students weren't talking back to me. They were in the class, and I also couldn't use the physicality of the room to walk closer to somebody and make them engage with me. So I can see where you'd need 20% more material to make up for the lack of audience laughter or just banter or just rhythm. So yeah, that sounds like it was pretty hard. Colbert says the silence was deafening for the first few weeks. We knew we had to be ambitious about new ideas all the time because there had to be something there to keep the energy up. Because me just talking to a camera, as much as I'm a huge fan of me, you need something that's an alternative to that energy. I can get in front of a camera and talk. That part's simple. Can you find the rhythm with which to do it with no audience? Can you find any internal impetus to keep going when the audience is why you got into this to begin with? That's fine. That's my problem. I have no idea about all the technical hurdles that had to be overcome. I don't know how they did it, but I didn't doubt for a moment that my staff would figure it out. From the start in 2015, Colbert said, what I really want to do with this old form that's been done for almost 70 years was see if we could do something new with it, to put new wine in an old bottle. I'm having a really good time. I'm more excited about continuing to do this show now than I was a month ago. I feel like I could do the show for 10 years, but call me in a week because it changes. But it's not up to me. It's up to CBS, and it's up to the audience how long I hang out. We're now emerging into this new world, and we can't make any predictions about. I want to see what the next couple of years are like. If they're what I think they're going to be like, I think I've got one of the greatest jobs on the planet. It's Sunday, so there's a new episode of my show on the Live by Live app. It is called The Weekly Comedy Thing. Real quick, what I do there is shorter news stories than I do on this podcast, and then I couple them with comedy bits. Live by Live is the app, Live X Live. The show's called The Weekly Comedy Thing. It's free. I'll give you an example. This next story I'm about to do about Robin Williams, I also did on that show, but after the story, I was able to play a bit by Robin Williams, which I cannot do here because rights and royalties and stuff. From The Hollywood Reporter, Zach Williams, the son of Robin Williams, is shedding more light on his father's Lewy body dementia. He spoke to the Genius Life podcast and said, what I found was someone who was having challenges performing his craft, and that was really irritating for him because when you're a performer, it goes beyond taking pride in performing. It's your livelihood. and suddenly that becomes challenging. From the AV Club, there's a trailer for the upcoming season of What We Do in the Shadows. Nothing says sold on eBay faster than a product called Evil Bucket, which is great for collecting evil but not liquids, at least according to Nadja. In the trailer, Nadja and the other vampires have decided to get rid of all unnecessary objects with the help of Guillermo. Here's a list of who's selling what. Nandor is getting rid of a loose bone and also a very large, very old mirror that swivels. Laszlo's possessions are a musical instrument and a sex rock. Nadja's getting rid of the evil bucket and a bloody witch's hat. Colin Robinson can't seem to part with what looks like a basic shawl. He's the energy vampire. I love his character. In the upcoming season, Colin Robinson's energy vampire celebrates his 100th birthday, while Nandor suffers an identity crisis as he tries to find love, so he doesn't remain an immortal bachelor despite his 37 ex-wives. That story teased me up well for the next story, so you know What We Do in the Shadows. You've watched it. You know the British vampire? He's played by Matt Berry, which brings us to, and we haven't had one of these in a while, a Matt Berry Sunday. Vulture writes, every single reality show would be better if Matt Berry were the host. I agree. There are some shows where Matt Berry's inclusion is such an obviously good idea that it hardly bears arguing. Imagine one of those big red chairs turns around on The Voice, and instead of Blake Shelton, it's Matt Berry who shrugs and says, yeah, it was fine. And then he just hits the button, turns the chair back around. Picture Matt Berry with an expression as though he's being slowly dipped in a hot oil, attempting to help a bride and find a dress and say yes to the dress. Or what about Berry on Bake Off, standing next to Mary Berry, taking a bite of a scone, looking mildly disgusted, and then saying nothing at all? The curious, vital key of a host job is that of a performance. Even the most bland host is really a platform for the host personality to get put on display. And if that platform is displaying the personality of Matt Berry, who even knows what you might get? He's a bit mysterious, which would be so much of the charm, perhaps a little grumpy, enthusiastic, but maybe about things you might not expect. But there's one specific reality franchise where Berry would make a particularly welcome addition. Chris Harrison is gone. Guest hosts are being cycled through. What if Matt Berry were to host The Bachelor? Wouldn't it be fun to watch someone who could not possibly care less about The Bachelor show up and awkwardly offer all the emotionally overwrought contestants a nice cup of tea? The dream scenario is Matt Berry standing in front of the rope podium, staring out at the field of hopeful contestants, saying, this whole place is a pigsty. You call this a mansion? My God. Lane Spurk, is you listening? How do you like my half-ass Matt Berry? It's not awful, right? It's really not. Guess what? We're going to Budapest. Personally, I hate Budapest for reasons I will not be detailing at this time, but at least I'll be better than this rancid excuse for a motel. I slipped into Angry Jerry Seinfeld there. I'm not redoing it. This might not be a role Matt Berry would relish. He might, in fact, hate every minute of it. But once you've envisioned Matt Berry sitting on the velour chair club at the Women Tell All reunion episode, sighing deeply and then saying, all right, Lauren H., you're up next. Tell us why you hate Lauren J. There's no arguing that it would make for some incredible television. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for art. Surely the spectacle of Matt Berry as a reality show host would be worth the personal sacrifice of however much he would absolutely despise the whole experience. And that is your comedy news for today. It's a Matt Berry Sunday. Thank you, Vulture. Follow this show on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. Vulture is a great website for comedy. Vulture.com. I even pay. I even have a paid subscription, and I am cheap. That's your comedy news. See you tomorrow.